What's up guys, this is Henrik and welcome to a new Valheim video. Today we're going to be ranking all the weapons in Valheim in a tier list, including the most recent update, the Ashlands. If you're new to this channel, welcome, it's great to have you here. I do a lot of Valheim challenges, series, building and speedruns, and if you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like button to support the content and subscribe so you can catch the next video. And with that, let's get into it. It's important to keep in mind, everyone has their own playstyle and different things work better for different people. Some weapons will perform better than others, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't play what you enjoy. There are three main factors that we'll be taking into account when ranking the weapons. Effectiveness. How effective is the weapon? This can be damage, crowd control, special effects, and ease to use it. Cost. This can be the material cost, and also the stamina and item cost of the weapon. Relevance. Is this weapon only good for one situation, or is this going to stay strong for several biomes against various enemies? This allows us to rank weapons based on how good they are at their respective era, rather than rank all the starter weapons at the bottom and all the endgame weapons at the top. Alrighty, so let's get started. We'll start off with the most overpowered weapons. And that is, very obviously, in my opinion, Staff of Protection. This is extremely powerful. This allows you to absorb a certain amount of damage with a bubble shield, and your character remains completely safe, so as long as you have that bubble up. This means that you can play really glassy armor, like the Fenris gear or the mage armor, which has a lot less defense, but you still get the higher movement speed, and you're still untouchable, so as long as you have this bubble up. Not only that, you can also parry an unlimited amount of damage while you have the bubble up. So you can put the bubble up, and you can literally parry a stone golem with your fists while the bubble is up. It might pop the bubble, but you will still parry the attack and stagger it, and then you can take advantage of that to kill your enemies. This is extremely overpowered in my opinion. It's very easy to keep the bubble up because it lasts for a very long time. It absorbs a generous amount of damage, and you can upgrade the staff to add an extra minute of duration to the bubble each upgrade. So by the time you get to the Ashlands, you can upgrade this to level 4 and have a 4-minute long bubble. It's absolutely insane, and it kind of feels foolish to play without using this. Even in a melee-oriented build, I will use 2 stamina foods and 1 item food, and that 1 item food is enough to cast the bubble. You don't need a second item food, and you don't need health food as long as you use the bubble. Think of it like this. A health food gives you maybe 70, 80, 90, 100 health in the late game, but that doesn't compare to a 200 plus health bubble shield around you, allowing unlimited parry potential. So the base amount of damage it can block is 200 at skill level 0, and then each skill level on the blood magic skills adds an extra 5 to the shield. It's absolutely insane, and again, I just feel so foolish to not use this weapon. It's just so strong. The next overpowered weapon is going to be the Staff of the Wild. I've only started using this recently because this came with the Ashlands, and I hadn't played the Ashlands a whole lot until recently. But this weapon is absolutely insane. It summons Elder Tentacle roots that constantly smack enemies near them, and I believe it does 100 base damage on normal difficulty, and with the elemental magic levels that can go up to 240-ish. But the absolutely crazy thing is this scales based off difficulty level. So if you're using this on hard or very hard difficulty on the combat setting in world modifiers, the roots will do more damage basically. So on very hard, it will do double damage. This weapon is completely busted on very hard and pretty busted on hard. But even on normal, I think this is one of the best weapons in the game. With the initial damage it does, it's just that good. because you can just kite around your roots and let them kill stuff for you while you just focus on surviving. And they're not indestructible, but enemies ignore them. They don't target them. So unless they accidentally hit the roots with an explosion or an AoE attack, the roots are just left there and they just get smacked by them. And what's even crazier is, other than the initial damage they do, they also apply poison, a significant amount of the poison debuff, doing up to 100 more damage over time. And what's even more crazy is they can apply the green gem effect, the immobilize, occasionally on hit. So if you just put a bunch of roots around yourself, they can even immobilize enemies for you in place and allow you to just completely decimate them. But what is also really cool is if you're using something like an Akki or a heavy crowd control weapon that staggers enemies, you can spin on the enemies with the Akki, knock them toward the root, and then they'll be staggered because you're using an Akki, which staggers everything. And then the roots will critical hit them and do double damage that way. So on stuff like very hard difficulty, where the damage is already boosted a lot, if you then get a critical hit, you can see each root hit for up to 600 damage. And I suppose what else is broken about this weapon is it's very low cost. It's only about 45 or 50 ITA to summon those roots. Which means if you're running a heavy magic build, you can summon many of them and just absolutely destroy anything that comes near you with them. This weapon is super strong, and I think it's going to make the Deep North completely easy. It's going to make it a joke, to be honest. If you have those two weapons that I've already put there, you're fine for the Deep North. These weapons need a nerf. They are completely overpowered. Next up, we have the Staff of Fire. The Embers, Staff of Embers, rather. I think this weapon is extremely strong. The damage numbers that this don't really compare to any other weapon from the Mistlands or below. Each fireball can do up to 120 blunt and 120 fire damage. So that's a total of 240 damage per fireball. This is the maximum damage listed for skill level 100. What it says on the weapon in the yellow numbers. Or maybe even with the white numbers, sorry. But it's just so much damage. If you compare that to something like the Demolisher, this does about 150 or 160 blunt, but it uses a lot of stamina, it roots you in place while you cast it for a little bit, and it's only melee. Whereas the Ember Staff does more damage than that, almost as much blunt alone, 120 versus like 150-60 blunt. But it also has the fire damage component, and it's from range. You don't have to slow down at all to really spam fireballs. You can do them mid-air, you can do them while sprinting away. It's very quick to cast fireballs. They are also AoE, and they just do so much damage if the enemy isn't resistant to both blunt and fire, I suppose. Now in the Ashlands, this weapon is a little more reasonable. I think it's completely busted in the Mistlands, but in the Ashlands it's not quite so busted because everything in the Ashlands just about is resistant to fire, so that fire damage component is brought down. So that's honestly a healthy change. But again, yeah, it's a very, very strong weapon, and even with enemies in the Ashlands being resistant to fire, I still use this a lot because of that huge blunt damage component and just how cheap and easy it is to use. Very nice way to deal with the archers in the Ashlands constantly spamming you with projectiles. You can counter spam them with projectiles of your own, and usually 3 or 4 fireballs is enough to knock out an archer. Maybe if you have a really high elemental magic and you're on a lower difficulty like normal or lower, only 2 fireballs could even do it. But yeah, the damage is really good on this weapon, even if they're resistant to fire. It's a really, really strong weapon. I definitely recommend using this. And next up is the Hymenafel. I do not know how to pronounce the name of that. One day I'll learn. but it is the lightning at gear. It is extremely strong, and it is significantly stronger than all the other at gears because of that lightning damage component. For those of you who don't know, lightning damage is kind of special in this game. It is the only type of elemental damage that still applies stagger damage, whereas stuff like fire, poison, frost, spirit, they don't apply any stagger damage. They won't stagger enemies for you. That is why it's really hard to stagger things with, say, Frostner or Mistwalker or Staff of Frost or stuff like that. Or even like a torch using fire damage. Like those types of elemental damage don't apply any sort of value into staggering, but lightning does. And then the thing with Atgears is, you can see all this on the wiki, but the Atgear spin, the secondary attack, has a 6 times multiplier for staggering stagger damage. So whatever stagger damage your weapon does, usually it's just 1.0 or 0.0 times the weapon's damage, depending. Atgear spin has 6. So this, with the fact that no enemy in the game pretty much is resistant to lightning, means you can stagger just about anything with that much stagger damage potential. So before, with other Atgears, it's kind of a bit limited because a lot of enemies are resistant to pierce, and you can still stagger them, but it's a lot harder because being resistant to pierce also means they'll be resistant to the pierce the stagger damage you do, because it's technically 6 times the amount of damage your weapon is doing. It's a bit complicated, but all this is on the wiki, the Valheim wiki. You can search all this up, and yeah, it can be tough to like stagger a stone golem with a black metal Atgear, but with this weapon that does lightning damage, which stone golems are not resistant to, you can stagger them very easily. And not just stone golems, like anything, like seekers. It'll have no problem staggering a 2-star seeker. It can even stagger seeker soldiers if you spin on their butts, or if you spin twice on their front side where they're resistant. Because nothing is resistant to that lightning component, and then with the 6 times multiplier, it's just an insane amount of stagger damage this weapon does. You can stagger Morgans with it. You can stagger most of the enemies in the Ashlands. It's completely crazy. So those are the 4 most overpowered weapons, and I don't think anything else is on that level of OP. There are some excellent options in the A tier we'll be getting to shortly. But these, I feel, are clearly above the rest of them. The closest one I would add is maybe Mistwalker. This weapon is very strong. The frost damage component is very interesting to play around with. It also has a spirit damage component if you upgrade the weapon, and it has a pretty high slash number as well. So if anything is resistant to those, you still got a nice slash number to go with, which means it can still potentially stagger stuff, since the frost and the spirit damage can't stagger anything, but the slash damage component can. And this weapon is very good at smacking the charred enemies in the Ashlands because they're weak to spirit, frost, and slash. So again, what we're talking about earlier is relevance. How long is the weapon relevant for? Well, Mistwalker's not only good in the Mistlands, it sets you up really nicely in the Ashlands, so it's an excellent choice. And maybe it's somewhere here, but it's the closest thing to S tier that's not in the S tier in my opinion. But the Himanafu is kind of just a whole new level ahead, just because it can decimate anything in the game pretty much with that lightning damage. Lightning damage is extremely powerful. So yeah. But this is an excellent choice, and yeah, a great weapon overall. And just to bring back to that relevance point I was talking about earlier, I'm 100% sure that these first 2 weapons are going to be extremely powerful in the deep north. You know, a bubble shield is never going to go obsolete unless they make a better one, but this one's still really, really good. And then, you know, Staff of Nature, the amount of damage that outputs for free at such a low cost is going to still be really strong in Deep North. And then the Fire Staff, I have a feeling things in the Deep North won't be resistant to fire because fire melts ice. So I have a strong feeling Fire Staff is going to be overpowered once again in the Deep North. And that makes like all of these weapons so relevant for so long, considering 3 of them come in the Mistlands, not even the Ashlands. But anyway, moving on here. This is still a very strong weapon. It's just not as good as those. Next up, I would honestly put the Frostner. Very similar to the Mistwalker, potentially even better than Mistwalker in terms of the relevance, because it is a mountain tier weapon. This is the best mountain tier weapon in the game. It is probably better than most of the stuff in the plains, because that frost damage on the weapon, and it is a big frost number. The frost damage on Frostner is the same as the frost damage on Mistwalker, and it has a higher spirit number. Well, no, the spirit number is the same as level 4 Mistwalker, I believe. We can double check that later. Just checking the wiki, and it will show all the different types of damage they do on each level. But it just does quite a bit less blunt damage than the Mistwalker does slash. But this comes in the Mistlands, this comes in the mountains, and it is really, really strong in the Mistlands before you get a Mistwalker. And honestly, if you have a really high clubs level and a really low swords skill level, then Frostner is going to do more damage than Mistwalker. I tell you right now. Like, the math is a bit tricky, but I'd say if you have clubs like 20 or 30 levels higher than swords, then Frostner will do more damage than Mistwalker. And what's really nice is, because it's a mountain tier weapon, the stamina cost is so low on the weapon. It uses way less stamina than any of these other weapon choices. So I think it's an excellent weapon, and it's very unique because not only does it do Frost, Spirit, and Blunt, it also has a huge knockback. And honestly, against fuelings and weaker enemies in lower level biomes, the knockback is kind of a nuisance. Whereas like a fueling, you kind of just want to smack it, stagger it, smack it again, and it dies. And something like a Porcupine is really good for bonking fuelings. It is the Goblin Bonker, basically. It's so good against them. One hit stagger, next hit they die. That's what you want. But for the Frostner, this is really, really effective in the Mistlands and the Ashlands, because you get that full value from the Frost. Like, the enemies in the Mistlands and both the Ashlands are very beefy. There's not a lot of weapons that are just going to one-hit them. Not many at all, in fact. And yeah, the other option is slow them down with Frost, knock them away, and tick them down with Spirit damage. I've also noticed, according to the wiki, that enemies in the Ashlands are not only vulnerable to Spirit, but they're actually weak to it. They take double damage from Spirit, or it might be 1.5. But they take extra damage from Spirit. So Spirit, anything with Spirit on it is really effective in the Ashlands. So yeah, a very, very strong weapon. It's a bit disappointing in, say, the mountain and the plains, but then it comes back to use for those later biomes. And if you have your clubs level up pretty high, definitely consider using this in the Mistlands or Ashlands. And with that, let's continue. We're going to talk about the next one, which is the Iron Atgear. I honestly think this goes in the A tier because it is acquirable so early in the game. This is a swamp weapon, but it can stagger so many things with the spin attack on it. And maybe it's less so the Iron Atgear and just Atgears in general, because I'm also going to rank the Bronze Atgear very high. But this is a swamp weapon, and spinning with this can stagger a 2-star wolf, no problem, which is a terrifying enemy. It's like, oh god, this thing is going to one-hit me, but no worries, this weapon will stagger lock it. You can just stagger it, spin and stagger it, spin and stagger it again, spin and stagger it again until it dies. It's really, really good. And if you use out gears for a while and get used to them, you will really start to realize just how powerful these weapons are. Just the ability to completely lock an enemy down from doing anything is insane. But not only does it stagger stuff like 2-star wolves, this can stagger fueling berserkers if you get your at gear levels up. This can stagger seekers, 0-star seekers with like at gear level 20. That's enough to stagger 0-star seekers. Like, that's mislance you're talking about, and you're staggering them. Like, most of the plains weapons, like a black metal sword and stuff, or a porcupine, can't really do that. And this is a swamp tier weapon. It is extremely useful, and I tend to just roll with the iron at gear until I get this one here. I actually skip the black metal at gear because the iron one just does the job. So for that reason, I'm actually ranking the black metal at gear a tier below, because it doesn't really do much that the iron at gear can't already do. It does extra damage, and it might be able to stagger a 1-star seeker, whereas this won't stagger a 1-star seeker, but really, that's not a lot of difference. Just about everything else the iron at gear can do. This might do a bit better against locks, but 2 spins with this will also just stagger a locks. If you spin, dodge its attack, then spin again immediately, you can stagger a locks with the iron one. Yeah, iron at gear, very, very strong, very useful for such a long time. It's really good in the plains, really good in the mountains, and it comes in the swamp. It's such a strong weapon. Alright, and with that, next up, let's talk about some other early game weapons that I find really strong. This is one of my favorites, the Flint Spear. If you have watched my speedrun videos, you will see why. It is, it's obviously not something you want to bring into the late game because it's a starter weapon, but this weapon is just so good for so long. Like, it destroys trolls. You can kill trolls with it. You can kill wolves with it if you know what you're doing. It's just, it costs like no stamina to use pretty much. It does pretty decent damage, like 30 or 40 per hit. It's great against Dragas in the swamp. You can just throw the spear, pick it up, throw it again, pick it up, throw it again, pick it up, and things just die. It's really good for a starter weapon. It is the best Meadows weapon you get. And the thing is, if you upgrade this to level 4, which by the way is really cheap to do, it's just flint and wood and leather, it's better than most bronze weapons at level 1. You have to upgrade a bronze weapon like these 3 here. The spear, the sword, the knife, and the mace, I think. You have to upgrade those to level 2 to do more damage than a level 4 flint spear. So the flint spear is just really insane for a Meadows weapon, and I think it goes in A tier. If you want to see it in full form, like in an actual video, check out my channel on the live sections and look at the speedrun trophy tournaments, particularly the ones that I won, which should be in the title or thumbnail. I used the flint spear while people went for metal weapons, and I did really well with the flint spear. Like, I was killing stuff in the mistlands and the plains in it. It's just so good. It's pretty insane. But anyway, yeah, best early game weapon. The other one would be the Finewood Bow. Oops, I'm getting a bit of lag. There we go. I'll probably put it probably here. I think the Finewood Bow, well, to be honest, all bows are really good, so I'm gonna put most of the bows up here, but the Finewood Bow kind of makes the crude bow a bit pointless because of how early you can get the Finewood Bow. You just have to get Finewood and that's it. Now, the game's typical progression system really only lets you get Finewood easily once you have bronze, because the idea is you can't chop birch and oak trees, which drop Finewood, until you have a bronze axe. But you can work around that. You can use a troll to break those trees. You can find a shipwreck. You can break bits of furniture in the Black Forest and get fine wood there. And then you can make this bow, which is significantly stronger than the crude bow. So because of that, it's similar to the Aki situation, kind of. Well, not really, but it makes this a bit pointless in that regard, because you can just go straight to the fine wood bow and just rock the flint spear until you get the fine wood bow, and then you just rock both of these all the way to the swamp until you get iron stuff. That's the idea. That's how I like to play. So the fine wood bow is a really strong weapon. But how early you get it, how cheap it is, and it can do pretty decent damage. You shoot down drakes with it. You can shoot down anything with it with patience, and yeah. But I think all the bows in the game are really strong and really well balanced. So I'm going to go ahead and actually put like all the bows here in the order that I think they should go. It's very, very like splitting hairs at this point of which order you put these in. I don't think any of them are kind of as OP as their weapons over here, but this is again splitting hairs when you're ranking stuff on the tier. So like left is the strongest sort of stuff, right is the weakest stuff, but they're all A tier. They're all excellent choices. So don't take it too seriously. Crossbows we'll do in a minute. I haven't even used the Ashlands bow that much because I do crossbows personally, but I've looked at it and tried it a little bit. It is very good. Just like the other bows, it's got a huge pierce number on it. But all the bows are pretty good, other than the crude bow, because you can kind of just skip this for the fine wood bow. I mean, if you want the crude bow, it's still good. It's a bow, it shoots things for you. That's why it's still good, but it's not excellent in my opinion. You just rock these 5 bows if you're going to go for bows. The huntsman bow, I used to kind of skip this because the Draga one is you can rock a fine wood bow level 4 and skip the huntsman bow and go straight to the Draga bow after the fine wood bow. But huntsman bow is actually quite good, and it has its own strengths compared to the fine wood bow. The damage isn't much difference, but it shoots straight. The fine wood bow and the crude bow are early game bows. They are inaccurate. The arrows can fly out of the direction that you're aiming at. They have a little bit of randomness on where they're going to shoot at, which can get you killed because you might shoot next to a wolf instead of hitting a wolf, and then the wolf comes over and chomps you. The huntsman bow doesn't do that. It is 100% accurate. It goes where you aim it, just like the Draga bow or any of the later bows. It is really good for that. The other thing is, it's really quiet, and I didn't learn this until recently, like a few months ago. It's usually when bows shoot and hit something, including hitting the ground, they make an area of effect noise around that location, and so you hit one wolf, the other 4 wolves are going to come at you if you hit one with a fine wood bow. If you hit with them with a huntsman bow, that noise radius of alerting things is significantly lower. You have to look on the wiki to get the exact number values to compare them, but I have a feeling it's about a third of what other bows do in terms of noise. It is really quiet. Like, I hit a wolf next to another wolf with the huntsman bow, and the other wolf doesn't even know what happened. It's not even alerted or anything. It's really good for like the mountains. So if you struggle with the mountains, make a huntsman bow. It's really, really, really good for that sense. It's a big upgrade from fine wood bow. Even if the damage is similar, just the accuracy and the noise can save your life. And if I'm going to ever do a deathless playthrough, I'm going to be rocking the huntsman bow and just picking things off one at a time with it. It's really, really good. Next up we have the Draga bow, which significantly increases the pierce damage and also adds some poison kind of for free onto it. So it's a huge pierce upgrade from the huntsman bow, but also adds poison. So for that reason, I think it's very, very good. And the poison damage is quite nice in mountains, plains, mistlands. It's really good for all 3 of those biomes. So it's very relevant. It's relevant. It comes in the mountain, and it's really good in the plains and mistlands. So all of these weapons are very relevant, as you can see. Huntsman bow, you get it in the swamp. It's really good for the mountain, and potentially really good for fueling villages. Finewood bow, you get it at the start, and it's good up to the mountain. Dragon bow, good up to the mistlands from mountains. Spine Snap does spirit damage, which, again, as I said, Ashlands mobs are weak to spirit, so this is actually a really good bow as well. I really don't know what order to put them in. It's very hard to say, but I don't know, maybe put this one here just because we don't know what's coming in the deep north, but it has a massive pierce number on it, so it's still a really good bow nonetheless. I'm not sure. It might do spirit damage. I'll have to double check that one. Maybe I should do that before I continue this. Hold on. Alright, sorry about that. I just double checked it. Yes, it's similar to the Mistwalker, so it initially does 0 spirit damage, but if you upgrade it, it'll add spirit to it, which is really cool. 5 each upgrade, and the pierce number is 10 more than the Spine Snap. So it's kind of a very similar weapon. Spirit, pierce, high number of pierce, and then add spirit, but I think it's very strong just because it does what the Spine Snap does and then adds a bit of extra damage to it. And bows in general are just really good, so that's why all the bows are ranked highly. Like if you ever want to do a deathless playthrough, bows are going to be your best friend because you just kill stuff from range, and then getting a sneak hit is obviously triple the damage, and you can just one-shot a lot of things with a bow, or at least stagger them, shoot them again, and they die. The other thing about bows is if you commit to them and use them the whole playthrough, skill levels make an immense difference on bows. It is completely broken, the skill level system with bows. They can gain up to 400% draw speed based on skill level. So you're looking at a really slow draw at level 0. Once you get it to 20 or 30, it kind of feels okay. Once you get it to 50 or 60, it starts to feel really busted. Once you get to like 70, you're basically a machine gun. Psium, 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 psium. It's so ridiculously strong at high skill levels, the draw speed. So bows in general are just really, really strong. That's why I've put them up here in the high tier category. Alright, next up, crossbows. Let's look at crossbows. I think crossbows are very good as well. They're different. Why am I getting lag? It's probably all the stupid adverts playing in the background. And I don't know. I think both crossbows deserve the A tier. Now, what really irks me about crossbows is upgrading them is really crap. They gain 3 damage. Like, really? My crossbow does 200 damage, and I spend these mats to upgrade it just to gain 3 damage. And to put that in perspective, that's equivalent to 1.5 skill levels. So you could just shoot it a bunch of times, get a skill level or 2, and then that's basically equivalent to just upgrading it. It's a bit silly. But I do recommend upgrading crossbows at least once, just for the durability. They do tend to have quite a short or low amount of durability at level 1, and upgrading it to level 2 doubles the durability, which is pretty good. So they are good for that sense. Both crossbows, particularly the Mistlands one, is very cost efficient on mats. It costs wood, iron, like a tiny bit of iron, and a root or 2 or something. Like, it's so dirt cheap. It doesn't cost any ITA to make, which is really cool. So if you want, you can go into the Mistlands super early in iron and silver gear and just get a crossbow and then use it in the plains. And I've done that on my most recent series, the Max Mayhem. I did it on very hard. I went into the Mistlands and I got a crossbow, and I used that in the mountains and plains. It was pretty funny because the crossbow just one-hits drakes and one-hits goblins if you hit them by surprise. It's really, really strong. I don't think it's a broken weapon, but I think it's strong, and it's definitely something worth using. What's nice is it's on par with the bows. I think you can kind of go either way. Bows are a lot crossbows are a lot harder to level up than regular bows, because you can't just rapid fire at low amount of power on mobs with wood arrows to level them up. You have to shoot the bolt, wait for the reload time, then shoot the bolt, and there's no easy way to do that other than just use it a lot to level it up. But that being said, even like having really low skill level on crossbows, it still does a lot of damage. Like a lot of damage. It will one-shot goblins, and it will probably two-shot seekers if you hit them by surprise. It just does so much damage, even at low skill level. And if you can have the patience to grind the skill levels on it up to like 40 or 50 even, you're looking at an extra 70% damage, and wow, it is gonna be crazy. It'll stagger locks on the first hit and take half their health. It just does so much damage. Really interesting way to play. I think the design on it is really good. It's very different to regular bows. Does a few things that bows can't, but also that reload time can be tricky to work around. I think it's a really, really strong weapon, but not overpowered. Alright, what do we have up next? I'm gonna fill out the rest of A tier if I can. There's a couple magic weapons. Frost Staff is really good. I'm gonna put that over here. And let's talk about the Frost Staff. Yeah. I think it's very high single target damage. It's not good at enemies in groups, but in single target, the enemy basically is paralyzed because you can use this from range, and Frost makes the enemy almost immobile. They barely move when they're frosted. Like the frost effect is really strong. And if you just channel this attack, they stay frosted the whole time and can't really move toward you very fast at all. What I've noticed is the duration which enemies get frosted is proportional to their health and the amount of damage you're doing by percent with frost. So if you use this on weaker enemies, like smaller enemies, like goblins, seekers, they can't really move at all with this. If you use this on bigger things like a Lox or a Seeker Soldier, they momentarily get slowed down, but as soon as you stop attacking, they start sprinting towards you again. So it's good to keep that in mind. It's really, really, really effective against smaller enemies. Now, something fun I like to do is spin with an at gear to stagger them, and then hit them with the Frost Staff, and the Frost will then critically hit them, which not only will do double damage, but also double duration of Frost if you hit them while they're staggered. So that's a cool combo, and not many players know how to do this, but yeah, you can do a lot of really cool combos with weapon swapping. You got to be quick. You spin with the at gear, then you swap to another weapon and take advantage of it, like a Frost weapon. Or the Fire Staff is also nice to use while they're staggered, or even just like a secondary attack with a sword or Frost Nut. Really cool. But it is a very strong weapon, I think, and it's very effective in the Ashlands. So again, that relevance idea, it's very strong in the Ashlands. It doesn't use too much ITER. You can shoot a lot of times with it. Even with just one ITER food, you can shoot like 20 projectiles or something and completely like lock down the charred enemies. You can take down a whole charred warrior or the Askvins, which I call Alvins because it's easier to pronounce. Very strong weapon, very relevant. I don't think it'll be good in Deep North. I don't think it's quite as OP as the Fire Staff, because the Fire Staff is AoE, it's easier to use, it's longer range, and it staggers as well, but it's still a strong weapon. Very respectable. Next up is the Troll Staff, or Troll Stave. Very unique weapon, kind of funny. It's a bit of a troll weapon, as per name. It summons a troll in front of you when you cast it. It uses a ton of ITER, which is why I think it's a bit more balanced than Staff of Protection or Staff of Embers or the Staff of the Wild. If it used less ITER, it would probably be S tier, but because it costs 100 and something ITER, you have to have 2 ITER foods. Unless you have blood magic at like skill level 70 or 100 or something, then you can get away with using it with one magic food maybe, but yeah, it costs a lot of Ita, so you need to really commit to magic if you're going to use this. So you need to use 2 Ita foods, which lowers your stamina or health or whatever. But it summons a troll. And not only does it summon a troll, the area of effect impact when it summons the troll does a ton of damage. And it can just obliterate things in the area for you. So even if the troll just instant dies, that meteor impact from summoning it is really strong. And I think most people don't understand that. You can also use it to farm wood and stone, which is really cool. So if you've got all your gear and you're still on the world just playing for fun and building and stuff, this is actually really good to like farm wood and stone. I'll actually pull up the game and we can have a look at that real quick. Now bear in mind I am zoomed in a bit just to hide all the ads on the tier list page. I'm just going into dev commands to spawn a troll staff. Hold on, give me 1 sec. I've got to find the name of it. Okay, sorry about that. It's actually Staff Red Troll, all one word. Very interesting. Okay, I have double magic food on already, which is good, but just watch what this weapon does. It's kind of insane. Bam! It just decimates anything it hits, and that can be big rocks. So I'll see if I can find a large rock or something, or maybe just trees. So you got fine wood trees here. No worries. Knocks everything down. Well, actually, no, it doesn't knock down fine wood trees. My bad. But it's fine. The troll himself can do that for you. If he can hit him. So you can actually just use this to farm fine wood for you, which is kind of crazy. But that immediate impact, absolutely insane. The amount of damage that does, but also resource-wise, just chopping stuff down for you. Really useful. I just wanted to show that because I'm pretty sure most people are unaware of how good that weapon is. But let's get back into it. So yeah, very unique. But that meteor impact just does so much damage. I think it's like 200-300 AoE damage. And then obviously you get the super juiced up troll minion as well that can smash stuff for you, and it will just decimate a lot of enemies. It's kind of on par with the Seeker Soldier in terms of damage and health. You can compare it to that, like a 0-star Seeker Soldier. So it can take on a lot of fuelings and stuff like that, for example. Moving on, because I don't want this to go too long. We're talking about the good weapons, why they're good. I suspect a lot of the other stuff will be relatively simple. Stackbreaker is a very, very good weapon. Very relevant. You get it in the meadows, or Black Forest rather, and it's good for the swamp. It's good, really, really good for the swamp. It's good in Frost Caves as well, to some extent, for like the bats and stuff. But really, really good in the swamp, and you get it so early. So, and obviously really good in the Black Forest for the burial chambers. So I think it's a very strong and relevant weapon. And you can also use it to find silver in the mountains. And the other sledge I really like is the Demolisher. I don't use this too much because there's other options I prefer to use, but I do think it's a very, very strong weapon. It'll completely destroy fuelings, one-hit staggers. It does so much raw damage, it'll one-hit stagger Seekers even. It's a very good weapon. But it's probably at the end of that excellent category rather than the front of it. Now we're starting to look at B tier a bit more. So what else would I put there? Berserker Axes and the Dunder are kind of the B+ tier in my opinion. I know they're very fun. A lot of people think Lightning Axes are really, really good. They're great. Yeah, that is true. They're great. There's no reason I have nothing against using weapons in this category. I think they're all very good. It's just that they don't compare to stuff with the wild in terms of OP-ness. You do have to physically go melee, put yourself in danger to actually hit stuff with the axes, and then you chop them up. These weapons, you kind of, like, aren't in any danger. Maybe the gear, but you're staggering them, which knocks them away and stuns them, so, yeah. Berserker axes are really fun, though, and they do a lot of damage. They're a great weapon, so yeah, they're in that B+ kind of tier, in my opinion. The Dunder, that is the lightning shotgun, I like to call it. It's pretty good. Not a bad weapon at all. I don't like the wind-up time on it. It's a bit like a crossbow. You have to charge it up. Definitely not as easy to use as, say, the Fire Staff or the Staff of the Wilds. But it does decent damage. And if you level your elemental magic up, it can one-shot stuff in the Ashlands even, or the Mistlands. Something I like doing is parrying with it, because it's got a nice high parry number, or even on high levels you can parry with the magic bubble and then critically hit them with the charged up shotgun attack, and that will do a ton of damage. So that is really fun to do. But less practical on higher levels when you can't parry that much, because they do insane amounts of damage on hard and very hard in the Ashlands. So parrying is not too practical there, but on normal difficulty it's pretty fun to just parry and then shotgun them. What else goes into this category? So there's a few other good options. Let's go with the Crom. And the Slayer, I think, is the Ashlands version of the Crom. They're a great sword. They do massive damage, but they're a bit tricky to use. The swings are slow. I don't like the basic attack on the greatswords much, but the secondary attack is just a massive stab that does insane damage. And if you want to do absolutely insane damage, you stagger them with the gear, swap to the Crom or the Slayer, and then stab them while they're staggered, and you can do like up to 1,000 damage. It's absolutely insane. So they do a lot of damage. It's just they lock you in place. You're vulnerable while you do it. It's quite a slow attack. Uses a huge amount of stamina. But they're still good, because they're not like the Battle Axe, which gives you a 20% movement penalty. They're only 5% movement penalty like the Axe is. So they're not too bad to use. So we'll get to Battle Axes and stuff later. They're kind of down here, unfortunately. But yeah, they're not bad. They're pretty good. And if you level your swords up, it's pretty fun to play around with this and have this as one of your main endgame weapons, either the Crom or the Slayer, depending on where you're at in the game. Definitely strong weapons. Next up would be the Silver Sword, because I think it's pretty good. It's a mountain tier weapon, but it's the best weapon pre-Mistlands to kill Yag with, because of that spirit damage component. And if you factor in the spirit damage, it does more damage than the Black Metal Sword. So while I'm at it, we're going to put Black Metal Sword down here, because I don't think it's that good. It is outclassed by the Silver Sword on anything that's weak to spirit. It only does slash damage, and then once you get to the Mistlands, Mistwalker is just so much better. Or Crom as a sword. So Black Metal Sword's kind of a bit meh. It's not underperforming, but it's just very occasionally useful. And yeah, it's kind of underperforming, I guess, but not too underperforming. That's where this category is, like, really bad weapons, and we'll get there soon. Other weapons that go in this category would be the Iron Mace. I think the Iron Mace is pretty good. You get it in the swamp. It's relatively cheap, but it can stagger a lot of things. It can stagger pretty much every Draugr. Most of the Draugr elites, maybe not the 2 stars, but the middle mouse attack on it does a lot of stagger damage. The secondary attack, I mean. Yeah, very good. Really good against the blobs. Really good against the skeletons. It's absolutely awesome in the swamp. Great for bone mass. and then you take it to the mountain, it's still good in the mountain because nothing in the mountain is really resistant to blunt. In fact, golems are vulnerable to blunt. So really good against the stone golems. Good against the wolves, it stuns them. Good against the stuff in the frost caves, it does good damage and can stun them. Yeah, Iron Mace is a really good weapon. A very, or maybe not really, really good, but a very solid weapon and definitely worth making. So it goes there. Another one similar to that would be the Fang Spear. You get it in the mountain. It is extremely cheap, and it is very friendly on stamina as well. It does a lot of damage for how cheap it is, how fast it is. It might be the best weapon to kill Moda with in the mountain tier. I'm pretty sure it has more DPS than the Silver Sword, because you just go stab, 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 and it does like 80 or something, 80 or 90 pierce damage, which is very high for that stage of the game. And yeah, it's just very easy to use, low cost, and very good in the plains as well. Not just good in the mountain, it's great in the plains. I'm pretty sure if you have like a decent amount of spear levels, say 30, 40, 50, one throw from the spear will stagger a goblin, and then you walk up and pick up your spear, stab him while he's staggered, and he dies. So very strong in the plains as well. Great for killing locks as well. If you're playing the game normally, on normal difficulty, not very hard like I tend to do, you can rock a silver shield, parry a locks, and then stab, stab, stab it with the Fang Spear. So this weapon not only helps you with the mountain, but also gets you through the plains, and that's why I think it's a very solid weapon. Next up, we have Black Metal Anki. I've already put that in. Porcupine is another one. So again, it's kind of hard to really rank these left to right, whereas, yeah, I don't know. It's a bit hard to do left to right, but I think these 3, or maybe these 5 or 6, I don't know. I think I've got the right idea. I kind of think these are kind of B+ category up to the Silver Sword, maybe the Iron Mace even. And then these are starting to be a bit lower down, but they're all B tier. They're all good. Nothing wrong with making any of these weapons whatsoever. Just want to make sure that's clear. They're just not overpowered, if that makes sense. So the Porcupine. This used to be one of my favorite weapons, especially when the game only had 5 biomes. But it kind of starts to fall off a bit in the Mistlands, and then it really kind of starts to fall off a bit in the Ashlands, because for the first 5 biomes, Porcupine is absolutely amazing. It destroys anything in the mountains, swamp, but those are kind of older biomes. You get this in the plains, but it's really, really good in the plains as well. It has blunt and pierce, like a 50-50 split or something similar, and goblins are weak, vulnerable. They're not weak. I say vulnerable as not resistant, by the way. Weak as in what is defined as weak on the wiki takes additional damage. So I just want to make that clear. It's not the best, but it's what I came up with on the spot. But goblins take damage, take a good amount of damage, or they're vulnerable to both pierce and blunt, which means this will do a lot of damage to them. Locks are resistant to blunt, but they're still vulnerable to that pierce component, so this will do fine against locks. Maybe not as good as the Fang Spear or a Black Metal Aki, but it'll still do fine. And if you spam the secondary attack, you can actually stagger lock loxes with it as well, because the secondary attack on maces has a bonus similar to the Aki's, although not quite as absurd. Not 6 times, I think it's 2 times or 3 times. But you can stagger lock stuff. It's really good against fueling berserkers. It can just do a lot of damage potentially in the plains. It's really, really good. But sadly, things in the Mistlands are resistant to regular damage, such as pierce/blunt, so that's where the Frostnet comes in. You've got Porcupine for your first 5 biomes. It's probably better than Frostnet for the first 5 biomes. Maybe not in the swamp. And then Frostner for Mistlands, Ashlands, which makes it more relevant, kind of, because you get this earlier and then it's good later on. Where this one you get it later and it's good for stuff earlier, which is a bit less relevant, if that makes sense. I used to think this was better than Frostner, but my opinion has changed since I started using Frostner and since I started using it in the Mistlands and Ashlands especially. So yeah, you play the game, your opinion on stuff will change when you try out new things, and yeah, that's how it goes. Abyssal Razor, I think this is the best knife. I generally rank knives pretty low. I'm just honestly not a knife person, so this might be very subjective that I say knives are not good. I'm probably gonna offend quite a few people who use knives. I'm sorry, but I just don't like them personally. I fail to see how they compete with stuff like at-gears and magic weapons, so I don't rank knives very highly. This is the best knife though because you can get it extremely early. It does swamp weapon or iron weapon tier damage, but you can get this as early as the meadows. If you just go into the ocean, get fine wood and leather, you can make this right away, so it is quite nice for that. Pretty cool weapon. And the rest of the knives I'm going to be ranking lower down, unfortunately. It's a bit of a shame, but the only knife that does any sort of elemental damage is the silver knife. So I might rank the silver knife kind of here, but no, not really, because spirit damage is not that great at that point. And the number of spirit damage is very low, and it's just very underwhelming in like the Ashlands, and it's not good in the Mistlands because stuff in the Mistlands isn't weak to spirit. So no, pretty much all the knives are very disappointing, to me at least. They really needed to make a new one in the Ashlands, I felt, that you could enchant with a gem, and that would kind of bring a lot of life back to knives. Similar how they did with the Berserker axes, they should have done like a double knife like Skull and Hattie, but for the Ashlands, that you can put a lightning gem on it, and then it would be kind of insane with a lightning or a nature gem on it, or even a lifesteal one. It's a real shame that they didn't do that. A lot of missed potential. I can see why they didn't do a lightning, a new at gear in the Ashlands, because you've already got a lightning at gear. It's just a different kind of lightning at gear, and it's extremely strong already. But yeah, don't know why they didn't do a knife for the Ashlands. It's really disappointing. And the rest of the knives just aren't that good, I think. Apart from the Abyssal Razor, which I think is better because you can get it really early and it's quite nice. But the rest of them are just outclassed so easily. So most of the knives we're kind of looking at C tier, which is occasionally useful, but there's better choices. I don't know why it's getting really laggy. I might refresh the page, just give me a moment. Okay, I think I fixed it. Yeah. Is there any more knives here? Flint knife. I don't like the flint knife. I think the damage is really pathetic on it. I'm actually going to put it in underperforming. I just think the damage is so pathetic on it. Bronze knife, or copper knife rather, is a nice upgrade from the flint knife that does respectable damage for that time of the game at least. But the flint one is really pathetic compared to like the flint spear. You should always go flint spear instead of flint knife, unless you're just having fun and really like knives. In my opinion, it's very opinion based. But yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, it's like the flint knife. Very hard to use it on stuff in the swamp, for example. Whereas the flint spear, you can use it in the swamp, no problem. You're not going to flint knife wolves, but you can flint spear wolves. It's a big difference there. Other weapons that kind of go into the C tier, which are like, you can make it if you want. They're occasionally useful, but nothing special. Would be this one. This one. The swords, I kind of feel, aren't really that interesting until you get to like silver and chrome. That's when swords start really becoming good, and Mistwalker. The early game swords are really like whatever. But if you want to level your swords, that's why they're occasionally useful. Like, you can beat the game without ever making a sword, no problem. But if you want to level them so that then you can go and make Mistwalker and actually do good damage with Mistwalker and have skills level 50, you should be making these early game swords and leveling your sword skills in the early game. So that's why it's occasionally useful. It's not completely terrible. It's not... Can't really fault anyone for making weapons in here if that's what they want to do. Yeah, so... Yeah, the other swords kind of go there. We didn't finish with B tier, my bad. I think the Iron Sledge has some room for B tier. Why is it lagging again? Oh my god. Let's put that in here. It just loaded more adverts. It's so annoying. I wish you could like turn them off. Carapace Spear is good. I'll put that up here as well. I kind of need to speed it up. We have gone for an hour now, so... Bronze Act Gear. Yeah, Bronze Act Gear. I'm going to put that like here. I think it's like similar. Might even be better, to be honest. Maybe more like here. Yeah, I think it's more useful than the Black Metal Act Gear. In fact, yeah, let me readjust this a bit. I don't think Black Metal Act Gear should be that high. It's nowhere near as useful as the Bronze Act Gear. So once you get your hands on the Bronze Act Gear, you can stagger so many things. It is a revolutionary weapon. Black Metal Act Gear is just a small upgrade from Iron Act Gear. It's kind of like whatever. But Bronze Act Gear, compared to not having Bronze Act Gear, it is insane. You are staggering trolls in one hit. You are staggering Drago in one hit. You are staggering wolves in one hit. You are staggering fuelings in one hit. And it is a bronze weapon. You know what? Honestly, just put it up here, to be honest. It's really, really good. Like the Iron Act Gear. Really, really good. Iron Act Gear does all that, but takes it a step further. It won't only just stagger fuelings, it'll stagger 1-star fuelings, it'll stagger 2-star fuelings, it'll stagger locks, it'll stagger seekers. Bronze Act Gear can't really do that, but the Iron Act Gear can. So these two weapons are just so good for how early you get them. They're so relevant. They stay relevant for so long. They're really, really good. Black Metal Act Gear doesn't really do that. So that goes in B tier. These two go in A tier. That is why. Hope that makes sense. We're not looking at raw damage numbers. We're looking at how good the weapon is at the time you get it and how long it is good for, how relevant it is. What else do we have? I have like a little template on the side here. I have to keep checking because I don't remember where everything goes. This weapon is kind of disappointing for a sword. I'm gonna put it down here. This is the fire sword that you get from doing all that traveling around in the Ashlands to those 3 mysterious locations. It looks so cool, it sounds so cool, the idea is so cool, but the damage numbers are really underwhelming. I think it'll be okay in Deep North, but it's just 10 fire damage with no special effects. Like, really? 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 Only 10? It's very pathetic. I hope they tweak the numbers on it. Pretty much everyone I've seen on the community Discord agrees that this needs a buff. It very much so does. It is outclassed by pretty much every other sword. It is outclassed by Mistwalker. I'd rather use Mistwalker than that sword. The Ashland sword is not too bad. It's nothing special. I do think it's not as good as the two-hand sword, but that's not bad. You can put lightning and the nature gem on it. Jade and Iolite. There we go. Remembered the names. It's fine, guys. I remembered. Jade and Iolite. You can put those on it. It's not bad. I don't think it's as good as Mistwalker. And I don't think it's as good as the two-hand sword. And for a slash weapon, I'd rather use the Berserker Axes. I think if you're going for slash, Berserker Axes are also just better than that. So yeah. What else do we have? There's a couple more I need to put in that tier. Ashland Spear. I don't know, man. Spears are really good for the first 5 biomes. I feel for Mistlands, Ashlands, they fall off a bit. Because everything is just resistant to Pierce. I don't know why. They're really harsh on Pierce, though, in the late game. Just every single charred enemy takes 50% less damage from Pierce. It's just not a good weapon to use. You're better off using the slash weapons or the blunt weapons in the Ashlands. It's underpowered. It's just not a good choice. I'm sorry. Spears are just very neglected in the Ashlands, and to some extent the Mistlands. And it's not so bad in the Mistlands because Jarl's belly is like weak to pierce, and ticks are weak to pierce. Soldier's butt is weak to pierce, so you still get some value out of like spears in the Mistlands, which is why the Carapace spear is a bit higher. But it's just bad in the Ashlands. There's no advantage to using a spear as opposed to just using berserker axes or a sword. Very neglected. It's kind of disappointing. There's no need for Chard to be resistant to pierce, but it's what they chose. And so the spear's just not really a good option. You're better off going swords. So even with the gems and stuff, it's just not that relevant, I think. Now, if they make stuff in the deep north weak to pierce, suddenly this will go up to here. Keep that in mind, guys. This is only up to Ashlands. We don't know what's coming in the deep north. If there's like a Lox in the deep north that's resistant to slash and blunt, but weak to pierce, yeah, we're looking at this going up here suddenly, but we don't know. So up to Ashlands, assuming Ashlands is the end of the game as is currently, it's just not a good weapon right now. So, but that's subject to change. Bronze Spear, I'm also going to put here because unless you go level 3, it's not really any or much better than the Flint Spear. So, yeah. Ancient Buck Spear. It's pretty good for the mountain, so I'm going to put it lower B tier. Spears are good in general for the first 5 biomes, but the Bronze Spear is just like, unless you go level 3, it's not really much better than Flint Spear. But yeah, this one's the Ancient Bark one with iron is good until you get a Fang Spear. So I don't know, it's respectable, it's good, it can go in B tier, that's okay. I'm okay with that. Yeah, really good for killing Draga, good for wolves, good for stuff in the caves, good for throwing it at drakes, provided you can hit them. It's not bad. Not bad at all. What else? Flesh Rippers is, yeah, I don't know, man. They're fun. I don't think they're very good, but they're fun. I'll put it at the end. Dead Razor. I'm gonna put that in B tier, I think. It's good. If you want to level your blood magic, go ahead and make it. I don't think it's great. The skeletons are just really clunky. The archers are really good, but the melee ones, which is what you get 70% of the time, the melee ones are kind of crap. They get stuck, they miss, their attack is slow, so quite often they walk up to a fueling, the fueling smacks it as the skeleton's doing its attack, they knock it back, and then a skeleton misses because it got knocked back before its attack got off, and then it's kind of there. But the archers are really strong. So, I don't know. If you roll a warrior or a melee skeleton, it goes down here. If you roll an archer, it goes up here. If you're only playing for archers, then maybe it's more of an up here weapon. But if you're getting warriors, if you're just doing whatever, then it's down here. It also costs a lot of ITER. It's kind of slow. They have to get out the ground. They could get smacked while they're getting out the ground. I don't think it's that impressive. It's nowhere near the level of OP as the Troll Staff or the Staff of the Wild. So it kind of goes down here in the B- kind of tier, in my opinion. Staff of Fracturing, I don't think it's very good, in my opinion. It's kind of goes into this C- tier, I think. It's similar to the Fire Staff, except it comes a biome later, and by that point, most stuff in the Ashlands is resistant to fire. I'll be honest, I haven't used it too much, but I tried it a bit and really didn't like it. I've just found the Fire Staff is so much easier to use. I think it can potentially be better than Fire Staff single target wise, but if you're fighting a single target, you shouldn't be using the Fire Staff. You should use a sword or something like that. So, or the Frost Staff. So I don't know. I don't think the Staff of Factoring is very good. Yeah, there's better options for sure. Yeah. What else? Bronze Mace. It exists. It's okay. You can make it if you want. I don't think it's that great, but it's okay. It's good for bonking blobs, I guess. Occasionally useful. Sounds about right. Yeah. Black Metal Axe can actually go here, just because you need it to chop in the Mistlands. Bronze Axe can maybe go here because you chop fine wood with it. The other axes are probably going to go down here. Torch, I don't know. How do you even rank this weapon? It scares Grey Dwarfs away, that can be good. You can kill the first 2 bosses in the game with it pretty easily if you just make a bunch of torches. It's good in that regard. Good against bats, I suppose. Good against ghosts. That's alright, it's better than a lot of the low starter tier weapons. But Flint Axe, Flint Knife, Stone Axe, these are... they're starter weapons. They're not really underperforming, but you're looking to replace them as soon as possible. Like, they work in the meadows, that's great, but they're pretty pathetic in the Black Forest. You're looking to replace them as soon as possible. So I think it's pretty fair to put them in this category. And the Iron Axe is really something you can just skip because you don't need it. Bronze Axe does everything the Iron Axe does. Axes in general are just terrible for combat. The only difference is chopping trees. The Bronze Axe gets you fine wood and ancient buck. At least the Iron Axe just doesn't do anything. Black Metal Axe is essential for the Mistlands, so it's a bit higher, but still in that occasionally useful category, and they're not very good in combat at all. Similar to this one, not really necessary. It doesn't do anything other than what this one does. Black Metal one works in the Ashlands, so this really doesn't achieve anything. So yeah. What else? Oh, Battle Axes. Yeah, Battle Axes. This one is a bit better. I'd put it here maybe. This one is, like, I don't know. I wouldn't bother with... If you make the regular Battle Axe and you're not used to how clunky and slow it is, it's going to get you killed in the mountains. So it's kind of anti-relevant. Irrelevant. It's just not good in the mountains. You need fast-hitting weapons. That is not what Battle Axe does. It's good against abominations, maybe. That's about it. But I think Battle Axes in general are very underperforming. Doesn't mean you can't have fun with them. I just dropped the difficulty down to normal instead of very hard, and then I played with Battle Axes, and I had a blast. It was really fun trying to make that weapon work and seeing what I could do. And then, you know, when it did work, it felt really good. It's like, holy crap, this weapon can do something. I killed 4 Seekers with it. Oh, that's cool. So, none of the weapons are completely useless. It's just underperforming. You can use any weapon you like in this game and beat the game. You can beat the game with a wood club. Like, that's the beauty of this game. But it's just some weapons do better than others, and that's why we have this tier list. So I hope that's clear. I hope that makes sense. I hope my explanations of why things are ranked where is good. Feel free to comment. And just remember, this is a very subjective topic. Everyone has their opinions. So be respectful to everyone else, myself, and yeah. Everyone has different opinions on this sort of thing, but I think that this is how it goes. And I've got a good grasp on what's overpowered and what needs a bit of a buff. So yeah, hope that's helpful. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, leave a comment. Would love to hear everyone's thoughts, and we'll see you on the next video.